witnessed.
Witnessed by an entire country here in the Bay Area. News of the terrorist attack stopped many dead in their tracks this morning. In San Francisco's financial district, dozens of people stood stunned and transfixed as they watched the news unfold. They gathered outside around a television at Morgan Stanley Dean Witter on the corner of Market and Pine Streets. It was a scene that was played out all day in cities around the Bay Area and the country as people learned more details of the deadly attack.
The U.S. financial markets will reopen. They closed today. They'll be closed again tomorrow for the second straight day. The New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ, and the American Stock Exchange were all stopped trading today, and the Pacific Stock Exchange in San Francisco followed suit. And there are preliminary estimates that it may be, in fact, several days before trading resumes. The Wall Street Financial District, as some of you may know, in New York is just a few blocks from where those twin towers and the smaller building collapsed. Mayor Willie Brown ordered San Francisco City Hall closed shortly before 7 this morning. Only about 20 people were in that historic building at the time, but police quickly put up the barricades around City Hall and the courthouse as a security measure. We still don't know if that building will be open for business tomorrow. Mayor Brown is scheduled to have a news conference at 7 o'clock.
Now, as a precaution, the city of San Francisco is in a limited state of emergency tonight. The Office of Emergency Services was in full operation by 7:45 this morning. There was initial concern that San Francisco could be a potential target, although no specific threats have been made against the city. They remain on alert at this hour.
We're going to be bringing in extra police officers in the event that there is something that does occur. All of the emergency services has contingency plans for mobilization.
A news conference at the Emergency Operations Center in San Francisco has been scheduled for 7 o'clock this evening.
The San Francisco Unified School District canceled all of its classes today as a precaution. Shaken parents rushed to pick up their kids from school shortly after classes started this morning. School Superintendent Arlene Ackerman says she made that decision after consulting with Mayor Willie Brown. The parents say they were reassured by the school district's decision to play it safe.
Well, it's safety for the kids, first of all, and it's a good idea, just, you know, in case of anything could happen or might happen, you know.
The school district hasn't decided whether it will resume classes tomorrow. It expects to make a decision by 7 o'clock tonight. We'll update you on that. It was a different story in San Jose, where the school stayed open today. San Jose Mayor Ron Gonzalez says police are in constant contact with the city's school districts, which all decided to continue to hold classes today. Public schools in Oakland also stayed open.
And authorities are saying it may take weeks to fully understand how deadly this attack has been. Casualties are expected to reach into the thousands. The 4 airliners alone had 266 people on board. There are no known survivors. The city of New York is afraid as many as 200 firefighters alone may have died in rescue efforts. The New York Police Department says it has 78 officers still unaccounted for. The dead and doomed jumped from skyscrapers, among them, and a man and woman holding hands.
President Bush is vowing the U.S. will hunt down and punish whoever is responsible for these attacks today. Mr. Bush was in Sarasota, Florida, when he was informed about the vicious attacks, first the 2 on the World Trade Center. He was visiting an elementary school classroom to push his education plan.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand.
Moments after those words, the plane crashed into the Pentagon, then the plane in Pennsylvania crashed. The president moved on to Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana and then to the Strategic Air Command in Nebraska. He then flew back to Washington, which is where he is now. He is expected to address the nation in about a minute. We, of course, will go to that live right here on News Channel 11 when the president speaks.
And in the meantime, the World Trade Towers have dominated the New York City skyline since they were built in 1973. Here's a closer look. The World Trade Center, or Twin Towers, stood at 1,368 and 1,362 feet tall. Each tower had 110 stories. The buildings housed 50,000 workers and received up to 200,000 visitors every day. The first terrorist attack on the World Trade Towers happened, as you may recall, in 1993. 6 people were killed when a bomb exploded in the basement.
America's peaceful existence here has been shaken today. This is something no one has seen before. The likes of this are unparalleled. The president himself and the leaders in Washington challenged to come to grips with how this country will respond and recover from this attack today that killed so many people, the President of the United States.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world. And no one will keep that light from shining. Today, our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. Immediately following the first attack, I implemented our government's emergency response plans. Our military is powerful, and it's prepared. Our emergency teams are working in New York City and Washington, D.C. to help with local rescue efforts. Our first priority is to get help to those who have been injured and to take every precaution to protect our citizens at home and around the world from further attacks. The functions of our government continue without interruption. Federal agencies in Washington, which had to be evacuated today, are reopening for essential personnel tonight and will be open for business tomorrow. Our financial institutions remain strong, and the American economy will be open for business as well. The search is underway for those who are behind these evil acts. I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them. I appreciate so very much the members of Congress who have joined me in strongly condemning these attacks. And on behalf of the American people, I thank the many world leaders who have called to offer their condolences and assistance. America and our friends and allies join with all those who want peace and security in the world, and we stand together to win the war against terrorism. Tonight, I ask for your prayers for all those who grieve, for the children whose worlds have been shattered, for all whose sense of safety and security has been threatened. And I pray they will be comforted by a power greater than any of us, spoken through the ages in Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace. America has stood down enemies before, and we will do so this time. None of us will ever forget this day, yet we go forward to defend freedom and all that is good and just in our world. Thank you, good night, and God bless America.
President Bush addressing the nation tonight. I think the most important thing that I picked up from there was he said that the U.S. would not distinguish between those who committed these terrorist acts and those who harbored them. That means, as Secretary Rumsfeld said earlier, that if it is found that a country was harboring the people who committed these acts, we would then take action against that country and its government.
Right now, while there is so much speculation as to which group could have done something like this all day, government officials have been pointing to Osama bin Laden, who has been known to be hiding in Afghanistan. But of course, Afghanistan said that they had no part in this.
Yeah, well, Afghanistan is at a civil war, too, so who speaks for Afghanistan? Who speaks for Osama bin Laden? The great question. Washington officials, of course, did turn their eye to the fugitive terrorist Osama bin Laden, and he made it to the top of the list of possible suspects. A U.S. judge had set tomorrow as the sentencing date for a bin Laden associate for his role in a bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Tanzania. That bombing killed 213 people, that and the one in Nairobi, Kenya. No one from the U.S. Attorney's Office could be reached to comment on whether the sentencing was still on. Osama bin Laden's associates had said in a London newspaper 3 weeks ago that the U.S. would suffer a major terrorist attack. One word of the attack made it to the West Bank in the Middle East. Palestinians were in the streets celebrating. In one city, about 3,000 people poured out of their homes and businesses chanting, "God is great," and handing out candy, a traditional gesture of celebration. However, Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat said he is shocked by the attacks, and he said he sends his condolences to the American people.
Well, the Bay Area is full of people with roots in the Middle East, and tonight, many of those people are scared. Threatening phone calls to this downtown San Francisco mosque. There it is, prompted extra security. Arab Americans are bracing for a backlash similar to the finger-pointing hysteria that followed the Oklahoma city bombing. American citizens of Arab descent, both Muslim and Christian, are as grief-stricken and outraged as any other American at these terrorist attacks.
My wife woke me up this morning telling me that they destroyed the tower. I do not understand. How could they have the guts to do this, kill all those civilians who has nothing to do with politics?
Bay Area Islamic centers are calling on the Muslim community to donate blood for the victims.
An elite search and rescue team is waiting for the official call to be deployed to the East Coast. Cheryl Hurd is live in Oakland at the fire department's Annex Center with the very latest. Cheryl?
Brad, the Alameda County Search and Rescue Team is officially on standby, but they say that they are packed and ready to go. Take a look at the inventory inside this parking lot. This is only a portion of it. Inside these boxes are highly sophisticated equipment and very expensive. We talked to a few of the team members earlier today, and they explained to us just how some of the equipment works.
Yeah, what this machine does is it listens. We will put these sensors throughout the building, either up, down, or the width of the building. And by listening, we can hear somebody tapping 100 yards away. And
the team is equipped with cameras that go where people cannot.
Telescopes out through these three adjustments right here, and you can get pretty far into a void space. And that's what it's really for, to peek someplace where your eyes really can't see. You can advance the camera, make contact with the person if they happen to be there, and search an area.
You can go through a whole slew of different instruments and actually determine an atmosphere, an unknown atmosphere, with the equipment that we bring out there on the scene. And so all the batteries are charged up, we're ready to go.
Now, this team is one of 27 throughout the country. There are 8 teams like this in California. A very important part of this team are the dogs. They have 4 dogs that will be deployed with them if they are called. They say that they are very important because they can sniff out people when equipment and people cannot. At 6 o'clock, they have a briefing scheduled for here, and we'll bring you the latest on that around 6:15. Brad?
Okay, Cheryl, thank you very much. From Cheryl, we're going to head across the East Bay and across the bay and down the peninsula. Local search and rescue crews are gearing up in Menlo Park for what is going to be, no doubt, a grisly job. Menlo Park.
Dominic, is it mourning? Are we mourning?
Well, that's part of it, Sandy. Well, what we really need to do is to come together in community. That helps us more than anything, to be with other people that are feeling the pain that we are, being with people that we feel care, love us, and that we can share in some way. We're never meant to go through this kind of tragedy alone. We're always meant to do it in terms of covenant, community, and being together and helping each other that way, to just share our problems and our sorrows together.
Three emotions come to mind: fear, and anger, and sadness. All very different, all perfectly normal reactions to this sort of thing.
Absolutely, and they're just part of the overall adjustment reaction that all of us are going to go through. And our church, St. Timothy's Episcopal Church in Mountain View, like many other churches, are getting together to have prayer groups. We're going to have seminars to help us to understand the Middle East somewhat. We are counseling with people that are coming in and feeling that they are in a crisis. We're also forming groups to help each other. And this is just part of what, there's no way to get around these feelings.
It seems like it's just the beginning, because it just happened this morning and we're all still processing all of this.
Oh, Sandy, we're going to be dealing with this for months and months and years. And it's like, where were you when Kennedy got shot? Where were you when the Murrah building blew up? We all will remember this kind of situation where we were on this day to day.
Can I ask you something on a personal note?
Surely.
As a minister, when you hear some of the Palestinians in the street,
yes,
and the response saying, "God is great," does that hurt you, especially being a minister, to hear that?
Oh, Brad, it does. And I've worked with St. George's College in Jerusalem for the last 20 years. I've been on the board there, and it's been very difficult for me personally. I know many people, both Arabs and Jews, throughout all Israel and Palestine. It's a very difficult situation. There is so many feelings of injustice, in prejudice and so forth, that it may be a long time before this is all resolved. But it runs very, very deep in the hearts of those people.
How do you deal with these feelings then?
The way I deal with it is the way all of us should deal with it. We need to talk. We need to be in community. We need to be with people who love us and care about us. And this tragedy, we will get through this. However, we will not get through it alone, Sandy. It takes all of us to help each other out. We need to be together. We need to pray together. We need to worship together. We need to be in community. And this is a way that we're going to work through this. I went through it in Oklahoma. We're going through it today. We're going to be at this a long time, and we're going to be talking about this for many months to come.
Okay, Reverend Thomas, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you very much.
Thank you
God
for
bless
being
you.
here.
Yes.
You too.
And word of some military movement south of San Jose along the coast of Monterey. An FBI terrorist task force is rumored to be finding a way back to Washington. Our Jonas Tischer has been following the story all day. You're at Monterey Peninsula Airport with the very latest. Jonas.
Good afternoon, Sandy. We had been waiting on a plane rumored to be on its way to the Monterey Peninsula Airport, intent on picking up an FBI-run group called MOOT, which stands for Military Operations in Urban Terrain. It's an anti-terrorist training group. And the first signs that there was something going on here came this morning at around 11 o'clock. 4 helicopters making their way over the horizon. You can see them there. The thought, perhaps they were on their way here to pick up this MOOT group, which works out of Fort Ord. Those choppers were pretty much sat on the tarmac for a long time. They landed, they were washed, and then we saw several people get out of those, tend to those choppers, actually get some equipment out of them. And then basically there was a small motorcade. Well, I shouldn't say small. There was around 8 vehicles that then made their way from those choppers through the tarmac, past what's called the Million Air Center, and then into a hangar. You can see that motorcade there. And when they went inside that hangar, that was pretty much the last we saw of them. The sources here at the airport say they were shuffled out and headed back north on 101. As for the plane that was rumored to be coming to pick them up, well, it never arrived here. Basically, the plane never showed up, and the sources at the airport say that they believe that what they've been told is that the plane probably won't be coming today, possibly not even tomorrow, that the agents with the Moot group headed north and probably transferred to another military base from there, and that at some point later on, perhaps this plane will come here, a large plane, speculatively, C-5, C-17, and pick up those choppers, pick up some of the equipment in that hangar, and then make its way from there. Other than that, there was very little to go on here at the Monterey Peninsula Airport, but as you saw, there was definitely something going on with those helicopters, and we did know that that Moot group was here training. They had been here since Friday. Sandy?
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Jonas. When a tragedy like this occurs, many people's first response is to go to the bank to get money. The nation's top banker, Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan, was in Switzerland when the attack occurred. But the Federal Reserve issued a statement saying it is ready to send extra money to banks nationwide if the need arises. Now, the terrorist attack shut down the U.S. stock exchanges today, and they will remain closed tomorrow for a second day. Authorities will meet tomorrow to decide when they should reopen. Jennifer Arterburn joins us now from the Tech Center with a look at how investors and the markets may be affected by this tragedy in the days to come. Jennifer.
Sandy, today's attack couldn't have come at a worse time for the nation's economy. With consumer spending slowing and unemployment rising, this may be just the push the markets and the economy need to head into a full-scale recession.
Yeah! Anybody need a doctor?
The devastating scene at the World Trade Center is just blocks from the New York Stock Exchange, even closer to the Mercantile Exchange where commodities are traded. But it wasn't just proximity that led authorities to shut down the exchanges. All other U.S. markets, including the Pacific Stock Exchange, were closed today, too.
Anything that represents the financial infrastructure or communications infrastructure for the country is now perceived to be a high target, and so you try to evacuate people from those sites.
Our economic center, the World Trade Center, they hit our Pentagon, they hit our
investment offices across the Bay Area were practically deserted today. People who were at work were glued to their TVs in disbelief and with a personal stake in the disaster. Many brokerages like Sutro and Company are headquartered or have offices in New York City.
As far as I know, everyone in our offices are okay.
Considering that the attack in New York happened so near the heart of the U.S. financial community, analysts say it may be more than a day or two before it's business as usual.
And I tend to think, most people, as important as finances are, they realize how important this is and how horrible it is, and it's very difficult for anyone to keep their mind on their job when these things are constantly going on.
When the markets open, analysts expect investors to react to the tragedy by selling stocks and buying things like precious metals and government securities, investments that are typically considered safer in uncertain times. Analysts say today's attack may help send the fragile U.S. economy into a recession. However, if the terrorist threat continues, it could eventually help spur economic growth.
Yeah, typically when you have something like this, the market reacts negatively at first. Clearly, a long-term, of course, defense stocks will come up. Anything related to an external threat to the country does nice things to defense stocks over a long period of time.
But with the ruins of the World Trade Center still smoking, analysts say it's difficult to even speculate how this tragedy may affect the markets and the economy in the days that follow. The attack not only affected financial markets here in the U.S., stock markets around the world dropped sharply today. Now, one additional note, just about an hour and a half ago, I got an email from the CEO of Morgan Stanley, Dean Witter. He sent that out to a lot of people. That investment bank had nearly 3,500 employees working in the World Trade Center complex. The email says the company still has limited information about how many of its employees survived the attack, but says its business will continue and that the investments of its clients are safe. Brad, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. We're going to bring you up to date now on what we know at this point on today's terrorist attacks. There were 4 deliberate plane crashes today, presumably all by terrorist hijackers. And in fact, on 3 of those planes, people actually were able to call others on their cell phone and tell them what was going on. 1 of the planes went into the Pentagon, 2 into the World Trade Center towers in New York City, and 1 into a field in Pennsylvania. That flight, the one that crashed in Pennsylvania, United number 93, was en route from Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco. And we do know that a student from Santa Clara University was killed in that crash. The death toll right now is unknown. We do not know in the World Trade Center and in the Pentagon how many people are dead, and in fact, at this moment, how many people may be dying. But we do know 266 people were on those planes. All of them are dead. We also know that in the World Trade Center towers, at any moment during a business day like this morning, at least 50,000 people are at work there. That does not include the number of people visiting. Around 1:30 this afternoon, our time, there were some explosions reported in the capital of Afghanistan. Of course, Osama bin Laden, who is in Afghanistan often, has been penned as a possible target. However, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld says the U.S. was not involved in those attacks in Kabul, Afghanistan. One of the most remarkable things that came out of this today, of course, are the pictures. And those are the things that continue to just penetrate our mind and our consciousness. Sandy has the extra edition here of the San Jose Mercury News.
This is a special edition. This is the front page. It says attack right there.
The Mercury News hasn't come out with a special edition like that since the O.J. verdict, is best in my recollection. The question is, how will America recover? And I guess, is America eventually at war? It depends on who they find out was behind this horrible day of terror. One of the pictures that really struck me in watching this was shot by a doctor who was on the ground when the twin towers of the World Trade Center collapsed, and he recorded this video.
10-4, thanks.
From weather and sports to headlines and breaking news, a half hour of comprehensive coverage that fits your schedule and your life. 7 nights a week on News Channel 11. The primetime news at 10. News.
Very safety precautions. It doesn't look like we're going to be seeing any closings here, at least within the city of Salinas, going forward from this point.
All right, Lawton Dodd reporting from our newsroom, who was at Los Angeles Airport earlier today. Lawton, thank you, where people were swiftly taken out of the terminal and sent on their way as a safety precaution. And much the same story took place today at San Jose International Airport. And our own Phil Gomez is standing by there live with details for us on what happened there. Phil?
Yeah, that's right, Dan. The flights, they may allow flights. The FAA will make that decision tomorrow, maybe about 9 a.m. to see if they will allow. It all depends on what happens this evening. But I just talked to the spokesman here at San Jose International Airport, and if you are one of those people, there are some rules and suggestions that they have made. The airlines are asking that you don't come to the airport unless you have a ticket. So just check the website and also call into the airlines to make sure that your flight is the one scheduled to leave. It's going to be a reduced schedule tomorrow, so there will only be a few planes flying in and out of here. They're also going to only allow ticketed passengers into the boarding area. So if you don't have a ticket, you're not going to be allowed into those areas. They're also going to just allow briefcases and purses on board planes, and you're going to have to go through for multiple ID checks throughout the day. So if you have a domestic flight out of San Jose International Airport, you probably want to show up about 2 hours early. If you have an international flight, of course, you'll want to show up about 3 hours early. So that's what's going on right here if you're gearing up for tomorrow, Dan.
All right, Phil, thank you very much for reporting for us from San Jose International. We get the idea right now that air travel will continue tomorrow roughly at about noon. That has not been confirmed, but the president did say he wanted the government to get back to its business, including the economy, which gives us the impression that the markets will be open tomorrow. It is 6 o'clock now on the West Coast, 9 o'clock on the East Coast, and you are watching KSBW TV, Salinas, Monterey, Santa Cruz, and our continuing coverage of this attack on America. An attack by terrorists this morning. And for those of you just returning from work, we want to bring you up to date with live reports from both New York and Washington. We'll start in Washington with our Beverly Kirk.
Good evening. A message of resolve and reassurance tonight from President Bush in the wake of today's attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. The president asked for prayers for the victims while at the same time vowing that the U.S. will search for and find those responsible and bring them to justice. Hijacked airliners, 2 of them, slam into the World Trade Center in New York. The first blows in what U.S. officials believe is a coordinated attack by terrorists on the heart of the nation's government, military, and business centers. Tonight, President Bush addressed the nation.
Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror.
After the hijacked American and United Airlines planes hit the Trade Center, the twin 110-story towers collapsed. As many as 20,000 people had just arrived for work. Almost simultaneously, another hijacked American plane nosedives into the Pentagon, resulting in an undetermined number of casualties.
A vicious, well-coordinated, a massive attack against the United States of America.
A fourth hijacked plane, another United flight, crashes in western Pennsylvania. Scores of government and corporate buildings across the United States are evacuated, including the White House, the Capitol, and other major centers of government. Airports are shut down. Terrorism experts say Osama bin Laden is the most likely suspect.
I've directed the full resources of our intelligence and law enforcement communities to find those responsible and to bring them to justice. We will make no distinction between the terrorists who committed these acts and those who harbor them.
And here at the Pentagon, the fire, as you can see over my shoulder, from today's attack continues to burn and appears to be getting worse, not better. But Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld vows that the Pentagon is functioning and will be in business tomorrow. Meantime, U.S. intelligence officials say they're all but certain that reputed terrorist Osama bin Laden is responsible for today's attacks. That's the story from the Pentagon. I'm Beverly Kirk. And now to New York and my colleague, Candace Gibson.
Yeah, Beverly, ordinarily on an evening like this, you would be able to see New York skyline lit up in the background behind me. That is not the case this evening. Smoke continues to billow out from the World Trade Center complex. The city remains under a state of emergency. New Yorkers in a state of shock. The terror attack began just before 9 a.m. when a huge commercial airliner crashed into one of the towers of New York's World Trade Center. Part of the building exploded.
A second airplane, a 727, just ran into the building.
Some thought it was a freak accident, but some 18 minutes later, a second commercial airliner slammed into the other tower, and a huge fireball engulfed most of the building.
This is a vicious, unprovoked, horrible attack on innocent men, women, and children. It's one of the most heinous acts, certainly in world history.
And sometime before 10 a.m., one World Trade collapsed.
Oh, no! Oh, my God! Oh, my God! Oh, my God!
30 minutes later, the second building collapsed. 2 of New York City's icons were transformed into towers of smoke, fire, and death.
It was a war zone. It was unbelievable.
Late this afternoon, a building adjacent to the Twin Towers and home to a command center handling the disaster collapsed. An undetermined number of people have died. What once was a symbol of New York City is now a symbol of terrorism. At this hour, hundreds of hospitals throughout this area continue to treat the injured, and they are many. Many of those hospitals reportedly overwhelmed by the victims. In the meantime, there are many outdoor morgues being set up, one of them being set up at Ellis Island. Reporting from New York, I'm Candace Gibson. Let's go back to you.
Candace, thank you very much. And the numbers in those morgues continue to mount. Latest information we have, it's estimated that some 200 New York City firefighters died when that second tower went down. Some 200 New York City firefighters, some 78 New York City police officers were killed there. We do not know how many people were inside the building and were killed when those towers went down. We do know that some 50,000 people work in those towers each and every day. And again, the numbers may take days to total up, and it is totaling up very quickly to be a tragic tragedy of epic proportions, and really marks one of the worst days in American history, far beyond the scope of Pearl Harbor, in which 2,400 Americans were killed. Meantime, here on the Central Coast, generally business continued on as usual. Schools were in session, elementary schools and secondary schools, high schools. The Cal State University Monterey Bay campus canceled classes in the afternoon and sent everyone home there. But the Monterey Institute of International Studies not only did not cancel their classes, in fact, they have stepped up their research and stepped up their work at the Monterey Institute of International Studies. And Action News reporter Shelley Haar is there to tell us why. They have some real experts in this area, right?
They do, and that's part of the reason, actually, that they are open today responding to the media and people who do have questions about exactly what happened today. But the International School here in Monterey is just about the only large-scale institution that did stay open on the Central Coast today, despite all the happenings all across the country. Now, classes did go on as scheduled, but students did have the option to stay home or just talk around campus. About 700 students attend here, 50% of them from outside the U.S. Some have family and friends in New York and Washington, D.C., and for all students, grief counseling and support groups are available tonight.
The other piece of this is what terrorism is all about. I mean, what's going on on the East Coast and elsewhere is what it's all about. And we, as educators, have to help ourselves and our students to better understand that and how one deals with those kinds of things, not only today, but into the future.
Well, some faculty members, in light of that, are holding a special meeting, a special panel, if you will, here right behind me, actually, at the Irvine Auditorium in just about a half hour for students. We've been telling you also all day that the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, as well as the Presidio of Monterey, have both been on lockdown mode. Well, just a few minutes ago, we learned that tomorrow, the Defense Language Institute at the Presidio will begin classes again. Again, that's only DLI, not NPS. We'll begin classes again tomorrow. It goes without saying it's been a very dark and disturbing day for a lot of people here and, of course, across the country. Dan, back to you.
Now, Shelley, you also spent some time over at the Presidio and at NPS today. They are locked up tight.
They are locked up tight. In fact, only people with badges have been allowed to go in, and not everyone with badges, in fact, just select faculty at both sites.
The mood there.
The mood is dark, as it is a lot of places, and we are incredibly far from where this all happened today, especially because people who work both at NPS and at the Presidio are so intricately involved. They're in the military, of course. They spend their time defending our country, and they of course, know folks who are involved in the East Coast tragedy.
Now, Shelley, you talked with some of the terrorism experts, and we do have some of the leading terrorism experts in the world at the Monterey Institute of International Studies. And as I recall, they were even surprised by the complexity of this attack.
I spoke with one researcher, Jason Pate, here at the International School. He said that they had been researching this for years, this large-scale mass killing, spectacular mass killing, and yet even he was surprised that it happened so unexpectedly today.
Straight out of fiction, straight out of a Tom Clancy novel.
That's right.
The sum of all fears, and tragedy has struck us here in America. Terrible tragedy at the hands of terrorists. Shelley Haar, thank you very much. The local papers here on the Central Coast have put out special editions. We'll show them to you in a moment, but meantime, across the Central Coast, people are beginning to pray as the frustration builds, and they are looking for anything they can do to help. And really, what many are turning to is prayer, and so there are a number of prayer services, a number of prayer vigils, and those are going on this evening. Here are just a couple of them for you. We will continue to show you as many as we possibly can. There are so many. It's very difficult. At Watsonville Plaza, people are gathering there right now for a candlelight vigil. We will bring that to you live. They are gathering over there about now. There is also services at the Seventh-day Adventist Church, New Harvest Christian Church, Holy Cross in Santa Cruz, Sacred Heart in Salinas will meet at 7:30. We have been throughout the afternoon and evening showing you on the lower third of your screen all of the locations where prayer vigils and services are taking place, but that's just a couple of them. What we will do in the next few minutes is show them all to you again. Most of them are getting underway about 45 or 50 minutes from now, and really many turning to this as an opportunity for, if nothing else, therapy. It's very frustrating. There are a lot of emotions involved in an incident like this, a terrible tragedy, and our own countrymen have been killed. for no reason at the hands of madmen. And so people are responding in different ways. Few know exactly what to tell their children, for example, and we will have more on that issue coming up later on this evening. But again, those vigils are underway. These the special editions of, for example, the Monterey Herald. U.S. attacked, terrorists destroy the New York Trade Center, and then attack the Pentagon. The Californian, unimaginable terror. World Trade Center gone, thousands dead in New York City, and we do know at least more than 100 people are dead in the Pentagon, which continues to burn tonight, as you saw moments ago in that report. Meantime, here on the Central Coast, in terms of business day-to-day operations and things that had been planned, Santa Cruz County Fair has been canceled for today. Many wondering exactly what might take place with the California International Air Show. We were expecting thousands to take part in the air show this weekend. And despite today's terrorist attacks, the board did meet today to discuss exactly what would happen. They announced their decision based on what they consider their charitable mission as part of the California International Air Show. And this is Harry Wardwell and what he had to say about their plans for this weekend.
It will be a benefit show that the entire community can participate in. While all the details still need to be developed, we will work with the local religious community and Red Cross to make this event an appropriate event for the tragedy that we are experiencing.
So the California International Air Show will go on. However, it will go on and be largely different than originally planned. The United States Air Force Thunderbirds will not be appearing at this weekend's air show. They are on heightened military alert. Meantime, the wall of fire and any other explosives, understandably, will not be part of this event at all. What they say is that they hope to plan a patriotic, uplifting event, hoping to help the community get through this very difficult time and help heal some of the wounds that we are suffering because of the act of terrorists today. Also, in terms of closures, Northridge Mall shut down today. That was the scene. The scene much the same at the Capitola Mall, the Carmel Plaza, many other malls closing down today in honor of those who have lost their lives. And again, we do not know exactly how many people that will be. It may be days before we have any answers in terms of the total devastation caused by the acts of madmen on the United States government and the people of America today, this morning, on the East Coast, in both Washington, D.C., in New York, and outside of Pittsburgh. We have put into operation our entire organization within the Hearst Corporation, Hearst Argyle Television, and IBS, which is our internet broadcasting arm. We have combined all of the efforts and all of the people, which is quite literally hundreds and hundreds of journalists, photojournalists, editors, and the like. And we are combining all of our information both on the air and on the web. And all of the information that you could possibly want is available for you, including video, photographs, news stories, the latest information, bulletins as they're available, and all other information, links, phone numbers to the airlines. If you are concerned about loved ones, it is all available for you at our website. And you can find that at theksbwchannel.com. Again, theksbwchannel.com. We will continue to simulcast our news updates on the radio through our partners, our friends at Clear Channel Communications. You can hear these updated broadcasts and get the latest information that impacts you here on the Central Coast at KTX 1460, 1380 KTOM, 100.7 KTOM, KDON at 102.5. KOCN at 105.1, KSJO at 92.7. We also will be giving you an extended broadcast tonight, a wrap-up of developments here on the Central Coast and the impact on the Central Coast. Tonight at 8 o'clock here on KSBW TV. Normal programming obviously has been set aside and will be set aside for the foreseeable future so that we can give you the latest information and the latest responses by the government to this terrorist threat and this terrorist attack on the United States today. We'll continue to do that. We will have 35 minutes of local news at 8 o'clock and again tonight at 11 o'clock, and we will be here 24 hours a day, as long as it takes to keep you informed with our entire news crew and the hundreds of other people that are part of Hearst Argyle Television, including our sister stations in Baltimore, Boston, our sister station in Pittsburgh, Sacramento, and our news department there in Washington, D.C. with live reports and the very latest. Right now, though, we are going to send you back to NBC News coverage and the latest information as we get new pictures from the Pentagon.
Of military leaders to adapt to the changing times. We now have the military leaders who are coming out of our service academies who are so familiar with modern warfare that is conducted by computer and technology and laser-guided missiles and that kind of thing. Are we going to have to develop new courses and new disciplines at the service academies for fighting terrorism?
Tom, we've got some outstanding military units out there that are fully prepared to take on the terrorists on the ground in any kind of fighting they want to fight the battle. Yeah, there's an awful lot of